Hello and welcome to Kerbal Space Program. I am Chris, the younger, more handsome Bash brother, and I'm going to be showing you guys how to actually get to the moon and back in KSP. Recently, my brother and I did a video where I tried to show him how to get to the moon, and well, let's just say I had to follow that up with a tutorial on how to actually do it because we may or may not have been successful. So, really quick, there's probably going to be a couple of parts to this, all in one video, obviously. But first off, we just need to go through actually how to construct the craft that will get you to the moon. That way you can have confidence that whatever you built will actually get you there. So we'll dive right in. Really quick, if you don't have a save file in Sandbox, I suggest you do that. It just makes it easier to make sure you have all the tools at your disposal as you continue down the path of learning the game. Okay, so go ahead and go into the vehicle assembly building, and I'm going to load up a craft that I had put together that I know can get me to the moon and back. And I am going to break it down and show you guys how you can make a similar craft, and I'll also have a link in the description of this video for you to download this craft yourself if you wanted to. I'm going to remove MechJeb. I use it for testing. So you'll see that we have 3 stages in the top right here. I use a mod called Kerbal Engineer, which gives you this readout, as well as some stuff in flight. I suggest you get it if you're new. It just does a lot of maths for you, so you can have it out there. And we're just going to go through and figure out what we need to get to the moon and back. And in order to do that, we have to do the math. All right, don't be too afraid. The math is not that hard. So this is a map of all we need to know to get to the moon and back from a delta V perspective. So delta V is the amount of effective thrust we can have in our craft, and when we have Kerbal Engineer, we can actually see how much delta V we have in our craft to propel it a certain speed or a distance. And this map's actually pretty huge. It goes through all of them. You can find it on the wiki for Kerbal Space Program. Just look up delta V map for KSP. And you'll get this. So the way this map works is each of these numbers and sections is how much delta V it takes to get to that corresponding point. So for example, to take off, we need 3,400 delta V. And then to get from an 80-kilometer orbit to the moon, we would need whatever this number is. I think it's 1,750 if I remember my math correctly. So we need to figure out what stages are going to get us to what points. And I like to do it in reverse order, because I like to build my rocket ships from the top down. So the lander will need to have about 1,750 to get back roughly into Kerbin's orbit. And I say roughly because we're actually going to aero brake on the way down, so we don't need to have quite that much delta V to actually get there. But that's enough for a craft to take off from the moon and get back into orbit of Kerbin. Now, something I designed for in this is that I actually have my follow-up stage, my next stage I'll talk to you guys about, helping decelerate during the landing. But for right now, just assume that the very first stage is really just responsible for taking off and returning to Kerbin. So, let's take a look at that. This is my return stage, and you can see at the top right here, the delta V says 1,726, roughly, well, almost exactly what we need to return from the moon. And it's a pretty simple craft. We have our parachute, we have our command pod, we have, that's not what I wanted to move, we have a ablator to absorb the heat, we have a sepatron to make sure we can separate from the rest, fuel tank, solar panels, some legs, and an additional fuel tank down here with this tiny spark fuel engine. So we don't have much in the means of, accelerating quickly in this thing, but since this thing's going to be doing all of its maneuvering either on the moon or in space, we don't need to have a big giant engine at the bottom of it. So this craft is going to be able to take us off from the moon and get us all the way back into the orbit. So the next stage, let's go back to our calculator, needs to be able to get us from the orbit to the moon and help us land on the moon. So that means our next stage needs 860 plus 310 plus 580, which, oh look, is 1,750 again. So the reason I'm doing this in reverse order is because my next stage has to be able to have that much delta V while pushing this upper stage. So if I went ahead and made my second stage or even the lifter stage first, I wouldn't know if it was able to push whatever weight this part of the craft is. But now I can know. So now I can take that part of the craft and strap it to the bottom of this and see what delta V I have pushing it. So since I needed 1,750, I actually have 2,000, almost 300 delta V in this stage, which is more than enough, which is sort of what I prefer because I have this actually assisting with the landing. This will be decelerating us along the moon. And then the last stage, if we go back to the map, is just for getting us out of Kerbal atmosphere and into this 80-kilometer roughly orbit. And that needs at least 3,400 delta V. So if we go back to KSP and we strap on our lifter stage to the bottom here, you'll see that we have 3,042 delta V. So I've done a couple things here. This stage doesn't have quite enough to reach a full orbit around Kerbal, but I have extra fuel in my second stage to help us get us there. So we're really good to go. And this is our spacecraft. So all of that being said, and now that we've done the math, you can feel free to use whatever you want to come up with these necessary numbers. And your mileage may vary depending on your skill. A lot of those numbers kind of assume that you're at least capable of doing a near best practice maneuver. And you may not be able to. I know, frankly, I'm not able to, and I put 350 hours in this game, so you might want to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room, like I have here in the second stage, just to make sure that if I screw up a bit, I can still accomplish what I want to do. And you're not just stuck in space and have to restart. But all that being said, let's go ahead and just save this and get to the launch pad. Okay, so I have a basic assumption here that you at least know how to maneuver a little bit, and hopefully you've gotten into orbit before. If you haven't, I'm going to be going over how to get into orbit anyway, because it's a step in getting to the moon that's required. So it may take you some time to practice to get there, but I'm going to run through the game plan before I actually take off. So I'm going to take off, and I'm going to try and rotate my aircraft to have my little bottom point of this indicator here pointing down the 90-degree point. That's sort of optional. I like to do it because I prefer to be kind of tilting in that direction opposed to just pressing the right direction. I don't know why. You can really skip that part, but I'm going to do it just because I know I can. It's something that rockets do. They tend to rotate when they take off to adjust their trajectory. I think it also helps with stability. So what we want to do is we're going to take off, and at around roughly 1,000 meters, or really whenever you can in your rocket, you want to start tilting down the nav ball, slowly pointing towards the horizon. And you want to go at this at a rate, whatever your rocket can. Typically, if you can have full control of your vehicle, you want to be just slowly pushing down until you're at about this point on the ball, until right around 45,000 apoSS height, which you can see with Kerbal Space Program. What is it called? Flight Engineer is up here in the top left. You can track what your apoSS is. Which, by the way, for those of you who aren't familiar, your apoSS is the point of your highest trajectory, and periaps is your lowest trajectory. So if you're taking off, the apoSS would be, if you stopped right now, if you stopped your engines, that is how high you will go. So if that hit 45K, that means you would want to actually tip down your nose further. I know from just playing with this aircraft, I don't think I'll be able to get that far, but we'll see. And the reason you do that is because as you push down your nose pointing towards the horizon, there's a horizon line you'll eventually get to, you'll stop raising your apoSS, and you'll start raising your periapsis, which is what we actually want to do. So the more you can do that while ascending, the more efficient your burn is. I'm going to try my best to show you guys how to do that. So hit T to bring up your SAS. That makes sure that we have control over it, over the aircraft. And go ahead and hit spacebar. And I'm going to start my rotating now. Try and get to that 90-degree point. Right about there. And I'm just slowly tapping, and then right around 1,000 meters, I'm going to slowly start tipping my aircraft over. And I'm just slowly doing this, especially at the beginning here, making sure I don't lose control over my aircraft, and making sure I'm just slowly tilting it down as I go. And I don't want to have it tip, I don't want to have it go topsy-turvy. I'm kind of doing this by feel. Your aircraft will have its own feel. It might be more or less stable. This one's relatively stable. And I'm going to keep on going until my apoSS up there hits around 80K, which is now. Okay, so my apoapsis is at 80,000. So I'm going to hit M, and I'm going to go up to it and add a maneuver node and hit out the prograde side to draw this out. And then what I'm trying to do is find a point where I can make a relatively equal... What's going on here? A relatively equal burn here. So I can get a circular orbit. That's not behaving quite what I would have expected. What is going on here? 60. It's pushing it out weirdly. That made go away. Let's try this again. I have a little bit of wiggle room here, but not much. Ah. Okay, well, it's not perfect. Go ahead and hit this maneuver node. And that'll help automatically tilt our spacecraft to the direction of the maneuver. Just so that you guys know, all I was really trying to do is make sure my periapsis gets above 70,000. I was hoping to get a more circular burn, but it doesn't truly matter to me. I can get it as close as I want later. It's not super important for this kind of mission. So once we get up there, we have an estimated burn of 34 seconds, which is about 17 seconds and when you cut that in half. So at T-minus 17, we'll want to burn. But keep in mind, we're going to run out of fuel in this lower stage before that's over. And this upper stage is not going to have nearly as much thrust. So I'm actually going to start now because I know that that second stage is going to take a little bit longer to decrease this delta V tank than the upper stage will. So we'll just watch this do its thing. Okay, out of fuel, and that's going to continue the rest of the way. I'm going to open up M, and I'm going to take a look at what our trajectories look like for now. So we can see in the top left here that the periapsis is slowly rising. You see we're pointing almost directly at the horizon, slightly up. And we are just slowly bringing up our periapsis. And again, I'm going to stop this basically when the periapsis hits 70K. I'm going to actually go into stability assist and kind of point down a little bit, make sure I get a little bit more circular, 70. Okay. So now we are in orbit, 7188. Not a circular orbit, but not something crazy lopsided anyway. Let's just go take a look at our spacecraft. There we are. Hey, we made it, guys. We're in orbit above Kerbal. Happy go joy, yay. Hopefully you guys did the same. So if you select the MUN, we get this cool little indicator of where we're at, what the ascending node and descending node is. These are the points in which we are either getting closer or further away from the moon. I think when it comes to like vertical axis. I'm not a complete expert on the ascending and descending node, but we don't really need to understand them for this. What I want you to do is select really anywhere on the orbit and add a maneuver and draw it out until your delta V cost is about, I think it's 850, 860 or so. So like that. And what we want to do is just drag it around until we find an encounter like this. So that encounter looks a little wonky. So there we go. And you just kind of want to squiggle this thing around until you can get relatively close. 178 is what I would call relatively close. See, the delta V cost is about 860 or almost 870, and we still have 1900 delta V in this stage to go. So we have plenty of room after we do this burn to do some additional stuff on the moon, which is what we were hoping for. So this burn's going to take 1 minute and 45 seconds. So to cut that in half, half of 1 minute is 30 seconds. Half of 45 seconds is 22.5 seconds, so 30 plus 22.5, 30, 40, 52.5. So at T-minus 52.5, we'll just say 52, we are going to start burning. And I'm just going to speed up time here to make it go a bit faster. And again, all I'm doing is selecting this maneuver node If you weren't in sandbox mode, you might not have unlocked this skill, in which case you just have to manually keep yourself pointed at the maneuver, which isn't that big a deal. But it's easier while learning to have things go correctly for you automatically. So you see, I'm not controlling it, it's just automatically pointing itself at the maneuver. And we're just going to keep on going until we hit that 52 time period, which is right about now. Up we go. All right. So that's happening. Let's just take a look at aircraft because it's fun. And we're going. So in this case, we really want to stay looking at the map because we want to keep on burning until we see that encounter with the moon, and then we want to slow it down and make sure that our encounter gets us as close to the moon as reasonably possible. Okay, we're getting pretty close here. I got my pinky on the control key ready to slow down. Alright, so now I'm going to slow it down until we get something reasonably close. 300, 200. I'm going to checkbox this. So we're at 200. We're going to keep it going. 220. Keep going until we get as close as reasonably possible. I think that's about as close as we're going to get. Alright, so now we just time warp our way over there. Okay, so now we need to capture the moon. So we're going to click this, add maneuver, and we're going to pull the retrograde handle until we get the orbit. Oh, almost there. So now we have the orbit, and I'm actually going to pull this down to try and get it as close to, you know, probably about 10,000 meters. Yeah, that's fine. I believe the highest peak on the moon is like 10 to 11,000, so if you're above 11,000, you're definitely safe. So same thing here again. I'm going to point at the maneuver node. This maneuver is going to take 42 seconds, so that's T-minus 21 we will trigger at, and let's just time warp our butt over there. Oh, I missed it. That's okay. We'll probably be fine. Alright, so I'm going to remove the node and let's just keep on descending until it gets about to 12 or 11. That's fine. Okay, so next we're going to add another node here, and we're going to actually cause this to come down, whoop, a little too much, just so that we have a trajectory into the moon. Alright, and yet again, we're going to time warp our butt over there. 7-second burn, so T-minus 3 or 4 seconds is when we will do this. Alright. So it doesn't really matter how specific I am now. I'm going to go ahead and start burning. Just keep it going. And okay. So now we have what is essentially a crash course into the moon. I'm going to hit this retrograde button, which is going to keep us pointing away from the direction that we're going, which means we're pointing the right direction to slow down. And you see that we have about 500 meters per second of delta V left in our lower stage, which means we'll jettison it a little bit before we land and finish it off with our upper stage here. Alright, so now for the butt tightening moment. Elon Musk said, who I bet was quoting somebody else, that a slow landing is an inefficient landing. And so we want to be as efficient as possible, so we want to come in pretty quick. So I'm going to quick save in case this all backfires. I am not perfect. but we are going to time warp now until we get, I will say, 5,000 meters? Sure, 5,000 meters. So let's just time warp until we get to about 5,000 meters. Alright, so in the top right here, you'll see our altitude. 5,400. And kind of falling. So we're at a pretty low point now from an altitude perspective, even though we're at 9,000. So, the question is, do I want to land here in the dark or not? So let's just kind of take a look. If I start burning now, I'm probably going to land somewhere right around here, which is pretty fine. I guess let's start burning now. So I'm just going to start burning now retrograde. And I'm just trying to bring down my meters per second, probably until about, I don't know, 200 or so. That should be fine. And we're just going to keep burning. We may run out of the stage during this process, and that's fine. Okay, we're about 200. And just so you can look at the map and see what that's done, yeah, so now we're coming down right about there. Or precisely there. Because we're going to slow down a bit more, we're actually going to be coming in. I'm going to try and not land in that crater. We'll see how I go. I'm also going to lower my gear, just so I don't forget after I decouple the stage. So I think we're aimed for like right there right now, which isn't really what I'm going for. But we're going to keep on going until our altitude is probably like 2,000 meters. And then I'm going to finish out burning the stage. So keep on going. All right, 2,000 meter altitude. Let's finish this stage off. All right, going to decouple that stage. And now we are going pretty slow. We're going 60 meters per second. We are descending. You can barely see where I'm going. To accelerate, we're actually descending a little too fast, so I'm hoping I can slow this down fast enough. 30 meters per second, 20, 18, 12, 8, 7, 6. Alright, we're doing pretty good. 5.5. So our goal is to land at around, I don't know, 3 meters per second? 2 to 3 meters per second? But I also don't want to waste a lot of my fuel while coming down here, so just keep it coming. 80, 70, 60, 50. Alright, so once you fall on the ground, you just want to hit X to stop your velocity, and congratulations, we have now landed on the moon. Woohoo! Okay, now that we've landed on the moon, we need to get back. So we have about almost 1,600 delta V to get back, which should be more than enough because we're aerobraking. And there is an optimal way to get off the moon. I can't remember it, so I always take off and go about the 90-degree direction, which is, I think, right here. So I'm going to take off and try and point myself there. Now, I'm not going to be using much in the form of maneuvering nodes until my apoapsis gets to about 10,000 meters, which I don't think will take too long, given how high up on the moon I am right now. I'm at one of the higher parts of the moon. So really just going to hold down shift and turn our craft to point at 90. Going to raise the landing gear. And we're just going to keep on going. We're going to keep on accelerating. And we just want to get out of the danger zone of the altitude on the moon. And so once we get to about 10,000 apoapsis height, we can start pointing at the horizon. So I'm actually going to start pointing now. Now I'm pointing more or less at the horizon. And we are pushing. See how we're pushing the arm out without raising our apoapsis much? That's what we were going for here. And with this pointing at 90, working pretty well. Just want to make sure I'm not on a path to hit a mountain. Nope, okay, I'm doing good. We can just keep on going. I'm going to tilt my nose down just slightly. Like we really don't need to be gaining our apoapsis anymore. 11,000 is more than high enough. So you see, as I tilt down, it slows down how fast we raise our apoasis. In fact, right now it's kind of going down, but it'll slow down and it'll start going back up again. So it's kind of a slow adjustment trying to get this efficient at pushing us off of the moon. All right. So now we more or less have an orbit, which is fine. And let me just keep on going here. 9,000. All right. So now if I point at my prograde and just keep on pointing, I should be blowing this part, the apoasis, away as efficiently as possible. And what I'm trying to do is just accelerate as much as I possibly can to escape the moon. I'm trying to leave the moon's influence and get us back into the Kerbal influence. And I only want to do this as much as necessary. So like the moment this changes like that, I'm going to cut my engine. And once I cut my engine, I'm going to leave. So I'm just going to time warp away. Maybe we go to the moon view and just watch us go away from the moon. Goodbye, moon. Later. It's been fun. All right. And we're going to keep on going until we're about here. And let's take a look. So, periaps is about 5 million. Apoaps is 11 million. We want to burn at the apoasis because we have less distance to go and it's more efficient. And let's go ahead and make this node. And let's see how much this is costing us. So, 1 million. Remember, we want it to be... Oh, not remember. So we want this to be, at a minimum, below 70,000. That means you'll eventually come down. However, if you're at 69,000, it's going to take like 80 laps around Kerbal for you to aerobrake back into the ground. So really what we're looking for is at least 40, and preferably around 30. So I'm going to keep on just pulling this in until I get what I'm looking for. There's 77, 31. Good enough for me. So again, I'm going to hit this maneuver node. We see that we have 284 meters per second of delta V necessary when we have 750 in the tank. More than enough. And we're just going to fast forward time again, as per usual, and get to that point. Three hours, come on. Scooch on a little bit closer. So we want to do this at like T minus 15 seconds, give or take. All right. Or T plus, apparently. So you don't have to be super specific with this. You're losing fractions because of how big the orbit is. And we're just going to keep on burning, or deburning, until we see our periaps hit that 30K. 40 to 30K is about what we're aiming for. Okay, I'm going to slow down just so I don't overshoot it. 50, 40, 30. Let's go down to like 30 on the nose. There you go. All right. So that's it. Almost there, guys. Okay, so now we want to time warp our butts over there and just keep on time warping until... Well, honestly, we can do this in this view. So it's going to keep us time warping pretty quick until we hit about 100K, so let's just do that. And it's going to immediately snap us at time warp once we hit below 70, so like that. And we want to point our butt at retrograde. And because I know how low we're going to get, I'm going to go ahead and decouple right now. So goodbye, that half of the spacecraft. Don't need you anymore. It's been fun. Later, it's just me and my ablator. I rhymed. So now we're coming in hot, as they say. You are going to blow into a bunch of smithereens. Maybe not right now, but it will happen. And as long as we keep ourselves pointed retrograde, our ablator is going to be taking up most of the heat. You can see it's slowly going down there as far as how much heat it can take up. And we're just going to keep on descending. Something to look at too, in fact I'll show you. See how our apoasis is kind of coming down really in a hurry? It matches that number up there. So once that hits below 70, means that you're definitely not coming, or you definitely aren't going to be rotating around Kerbal a couple of times. So once it hits below 70, you're doing good. And then once either of those numbers become negative, it's a confirmed, like, you're about to go into the ground, it's going to happen. So we will be seeing that happen here shortly. So we can see, there you go, you see the The trajectory is going into Kerbal, so we're definitely landing today, folks. Alright. And we are slowly coming out of the flame territory. Our blader did well. So as we descend, we're really going to kind of let the craft just fall at its own rate. When our altitude hits about, really you can get away with as close as like 1,000 or 1,500. For safety, I'd suggest around 3,000. We're going to start doing things. We're going to jettison this heat shield, and then once it's safe to deploy our parachute, which is actually now if you really wanted to, we are going to deploy our parachute, and then we'll make sure we come down safely. Looks like we're coming down in the Rockies. So we're just keep on descending until our altitude is about 5,000 or so, and then I'm going to jettison that shield. So the reason I jettison this heat shield is because if it lands, or if it's attached to me when I land, it has a tendency to explode on impact. So removing it means that it's actually a relatively weak part compared to your crew pod. Your crew hatch will take a bit of damage. This won't. So it makes sure that the world doesn't explode when you come landing down. All right, so I'm at 1,800. I'm going to pull my chute. We're going to see once that deploys, we're going to see this kind of go woo, fall away. Woo, there it goes. Bye-bye. And it's going to go poof. We'll see. Go anytime now. Wait for it. Poof. There he goes. And now we're just going to kind of float gently to the ground. I'm going to time warp this. Very peaceful. And once we get really close, I like to turn off the time warp just to make sure that the time warp doesn't break things and stuff suddenly explodes. And even though we're coming in on a slat, we should just stay still. Should. Yeah, okay. And that's it. We can now recover our vessel, and we have now made it to the moon and back. Hope you followed along. Hope you liked it. Like this video if you liked it. Dislike this video if you're a jerk. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.